The biggest problem facing humanity is disunity. What's the solution to disunity? Unity. How can humanity unite? There's really no way other than spiritually, in terms of our nature and the nature of reality, which quantum physics is finally coming around to help us understand that what materialism is not an accurate model. And in fact, they're now theorizing that consciousness is the base layer, which is part and parcel with spirituality. It is that unseen realm that connects all of us. And when you really think about it, there's really no other way humanity can unite outside of our identity. Not to mention, uniting through our identity is the most powerful way humanity could unite. Because if we see ourselves as, through our identity, as family, let's say, one human, then it doesn't matter where you are, who you are, what nation, level of intelligence, wealth, it doesn't matter. If you see yourself as family, then that is a way to achieve unity that cannot be broken by anything that happens within this realm. And so the question is, how can we unite spiritually through our identity as a human family? Well, religion has always been a part of every civilization that has existed, and we understand why. It is that conduit between man and the spiritual realm. It provides us that unity in understanding the nature of ourselves, and most importantly to all of us at the individual level, is what happens when we pass away. And so that provides a sense of security in being able to believe with confidence that you know what's going to happen to you and what it means for you while you're here. And so, again, throughout history, all civilizations have had their own form of religion, their own prophets, their own sacred texts. And so now we're at a point where it is an unprecedented state in that for the first time we are a global family, or potentially could identify as a global family. We can now communicate with people around the world instantaneously. That has never happened before. And so we are in uncharted territory. And so this problem of unity that all civilizations have faced, and when not addressed, all kingdoms have resulted in desolation, as the Bible says, and a house divided cannot stand. And so we know this to be true. That's why the simple axiom of united we rise, divided we fall is well known today, because this is a fundamental truth of reality. And so in today's world, where we now have access and connection to each other and are able to communicate instantaneously the world over, well, we are now at a point where we have to address this problem of disunity. There's no way around it. And again, I think it's important that we recognize that spirituality, or religion, is really the key to achieving that unity. And so how do we do that? Well, you just get on social media and you can see it is an ongoing, endless debate with, frankly, no end in sight between all these different religions, not to mention the compounded problem of them literally condemning each other for what they believe and judging each other to eternal torment and punishment based on what they believe. This is a problem, and a global family cannot be achieved. And so if we are a world that is now able to live as a human family, if we remain divided, we will fall. We will collapse under our own arrogance and pride that we know the deepest divine truths and the nature of reality better than all cultures in this world. And so for any religion that sees the world through that lens of tribalism, I don't see how they can see themselves as the solution. And so I think one of the most important things is to recognize that humility is a virtue that we all need to embrace in these times. We should all be humble and be open to teaching from other societies, other civilizations. We should be open to ideas. We should not be stuck in our dogmatic perspectives that oftentimes have nothing to do with coexistence. A lot of these religious debates are not really about how we love each other or neglect to love each other. It's more about the metaphysics of reality and the things that none of us can really prove. And you can't make the argument that mine is better than yours, because all of them have their own miracles. All of them have their own testimonials of how their perspective changed their life, and they would never give it up. And so I think at this point in time, we need to see religion for what it was. It was essentially humanity's training wheels on this bicycle of time throughout history, where we've, in all these different pockets, had our own experiences of the divine. And I believe they were all stepping stones in a cosmic stage play sense. I don't believe God was absent before Jesus Christ. I don't believe that there are coincidences or anything that has happened throughout history, especially significant events where religions are formed. I don't believe that's just by chance. I don't think God rolls dice, like I think it was Einstein that said that. I don't know. But anyway, if you have faith, the original meaning of faith, not I'm Catholic or I'm Protestant or I'm Buddhist or Hindu or Muslim. No, but the original meaning of faith, faith that there is a divine source, creator, essence, omnipotence that is in control of the broader narrative or the plot or the key events in existence, then I think it's important that we see it through that lens. Because once you do, it allows you to embrace humility. It allows you to see the point at which we're in right now and see where we could potentially go from here that would take off those training wheels. Because, again, religion was always a conduit to that spiritual realm and the understanding and the beliefs. And so if spirituality is that end goal, or a comprehensive spiritual understanding of the nature of reality is that end goal, well, then ultimately religion serves no purpose. In fact, what it's doing right now, it's just a source of division. So we need to have a paradigm shift in our perspective of religion and respect the importance and the uniqueness of it throughout the world in all its different forms. But most importantly, recognize that where we go from here, which is in line with the fact that we're able to communicate globally, we're probably approaching that final point where religion is no longer a thing, because the comprehensive spiritual understanding means that religion doesn't serve a purpose anymore. But we still have to get there. We're not there yet. And so how do we get there? I think we all need to start by being humble and really asking the difficult questions about what matters in your religion, how you define the mother of God or the mother of Jesus, the divine feminine. What sort of control mechanisms are unnecessary? Is there a hierarchical structure that gives man power over other men unnecessarily and unproductively? Is there a model that is more decentralized and equal across the board, that is similar to what we're seeing in a lot of industry, the decentralization of power, or there are various things that are very similar to that. We see our bloated governments and the abuse of power and the abuse of the financial system and the military industrial complex. We're seeing that authority is clearly not one that we should just blindly trust. And I think that applies the same to religion. As much as this will really enrage a lot of religious people, I think we have to go through this process. And so in this process, I think we can look at all of our different texts and all of our historical accounts, and we can focus on the promises and that this was told to us, that this is the divine truth, and we must accept it. We should be looking at red flags like that. That's a red flag, because what is that? That's now coercion. You're taking something that is really just a matter of discovery of truth, and in that process of an individual or a collective discovering truth, they should never be coerced into coming to whatever conclusion they do about the truth. That's essentially like confirming your bias. It's arguing from a conclusion rather than arguing to a conclusion. And so if we take away that argument from authority, whether it's the texts or the prophets or the church fathers, if we take that out of the equation, and rather than focusing on these covenants and these commandments, we shift our perspective and we focus on principles and awareness and coexistence, now we're slightly adjusting the model that provides the opportunity for us to actually come to a shared conclusion about the nature of reality spiritually. And if we can't, at least we can focus in the meantime on the very principles that will allow us to align ourselves with, so that we can live as one human family in peace and in love, so that we can rise and thrive, rather than this ongoing, never-ending religious debate where we are condemning each other to eternal suffering, and in some cases wars are and atrocities are happening, and again, they're not going to go away so long as we can't transcend our division and find that common ground, while at the same time embracing the core principles of whatever religion we come from. And Jesus Christ did a good job of attempting that. He said the sum of the law and the prophets is to love God, or love the creator of all things, so love all of creation, and then love other people as you love yourself. It really is as simple as that. And all prophets, or all religions, have prophets that have spoken of this golden rule in their own terms. So we know that this applies to all religions, and so Jesus Christ was essentially fulfilling or confirming what history had already showed us, that in terms of our actions and our ability to coexist, that is the sum of the law and the prophets. And so it's partly focusing on that, but again, we need to now look beyond the general understanding of loving each other, and try to build on how exactly we do that. And we do that through understanding principles. And so that is really the next step for humanity. And in today's world, we can have this global discussion. We have science now embarking on this final frontier, so to speak, of consciousness, and trying to integrate that into our model of reality. And so, given that consciousness is synonymous with spirit, we have the support of the very field of science attempting to help us grow out of this religious divide into a spiritual awareness that is comprehensive and allows for us to live and coexist in peace. And so the main message here is to provide this analogy, so to speak, that when you look back at history and you really look at your religion and the beliefs that you hold, if you look at all the religions, you can see them as stepping stones along this path, this journey of the collective mind of humanity. Only now, though, we actually have the ability to share in discussion all of our collective experiences. And I think that calls us all to come together in a humble way and refocus and understand that what is important is the truth, but until we get to that agreed upon truth, accepting that all of these texts were written by man. Even the Bible talks about the lying pens of the scribes. So even the Bible recognizes that these texts over time can be influenced or corrupted. And so it's not to say that we can't trust them. Well, it is to say that we shouldn't put blind trust in them. It's not to say we shouldn't incorporate them. It's not to say we shouldn't embrace them and look at them. But it's to say that no one statement in any one of these texts should be looked at as gospel, as the saying goes. But it shouldn't be looked at as a reason to embrace a philosophy or a worldview or a negative, energetic perspective that prevents us from living together and recognizing that we are one human family. And so I think this is where Jesus Christ is going to play a huge role. And many people have the idea that this is the second coming of Christ. It's a consciousness, it's a state of awareness that Christ is something within us, along with the entire kingdom of God, as he said. And that the truth does set you free, in a sense. Not free from reaping what you sow or your actions. There's still the reality that how we treat others is how we're treating God. And one day we will relive that in the afterlife through a life review process as spoken of by the near-death experiencers. But, what it means is that there's a very good chance that there are distortions. And when you look at a lot of what Jesus Christ said, back to what I was saying about how the truth sets you free. It doesn't enslave you to traditions of men from a specific religious institution that forces you to judge other people to eternal damnation. And they'll say, "Oh no, but we don't ever tell you to judge people, but we tell you in the Catholic faith, for example, the Catechism of the Catholic Church, if you do these things, they are mortal sins." And then over here it says, if you die in the state of mortal sin, you go to hell. And so you are essentially being conditioned to judge other people. And I think that's the problem. And I think one of the big subjects here as part of this global roundtable discussion is going to be the nature of ourselves as eternal divine beings. And what we'll find is that the idea that we perceive love and a creator that is love and light, that we perceive him as a God that would ever abandon his creation or abandon humanity without providing an eternal support for rehabilitation. I think that is a distortion of love that will definitely prevent us from ever understanding the true nature of this reality, because it just doesn't make sense. It's a misrepresentation and a misunderstanding of love. Love is mercy. Love is forgiveness. Love is support. Love is care, cultivation of relationships. Love is an eternal concept where the other is willing the best for you and you are willing the best for the other. And love as a spiritual force is more powerful than hate. So the idea that anyone could hate themselves or hate others to hell, or hate God to hell, is to just say that love was impotent, and God being omnipotent, that's not compatible. And so that's a separate subject that I digressed on. But I do think that where we are going, humanity's future is one of spiritual oneness. And so this never-ending religious debate, this debate on worldviews and eschatology, we're seeing it more and more in the world. I think this is the final debate that will ultimately lead to spiritual unity. And so for the people that can't accept that all religious texts, although there's plenty of prophecy and value that comes from a lot of the teachings, if you can't accept that no one statement in those texts should ever be looked at as 100% the Word of God, if you can't accept that, then you're going to find yourself, not to mention just the interpretations of these different texts. There's thousands upon thousands. So which one do we accept? Well, you must accept the church fathers because they're the closest. Again, that's the argument from authority, and I don't think we're ever going to grow to spiritual unity if we are focusing on things from that dogmatic perspective. And again, half of those things that we stand by don't have nothing to do with how we treat each other. And so I think we should recognize the problem of the collective, which is disunity, and we should recognize that the solution is a simplified spiritual understanding of our nature and the nature of reality, and we should focus on the principles and move away from pointing to texts that, if we're just honest, we just have to accept that we don't know what sort of influence went into the writings. We don't know what sort of influence went into putting all of it together. And to be quite honest, I think it's all divine. I think the Bible's so divinely inspired that it was able to distort certain truths, the most powerful ones that speak of our divinity and our eternal nature. And so it was so divinely inspired that we were able to be misled for 2,000 years under this idea that we're actually separate and that there's this physical reality, when in all actuality there is nothing physical. This is all transient, and we are not separate. We are all one, cosmically, metaphysically, under the law of one. And so it's so divinely inspired that we were able to be misled for so long, only to use that same book now to look at it with a closer lens and look at the deeper layers of meaning and find out that Jesus Christ and his original message were distorted, and that this second coming, the idea that it could be a second coming within all of us, an elevation of consciousness and awareness, that's something that's inspiring. It doesn't take away from what Jesus said. It inspires us to take the initiative to really take a closer look at what he taught as it pertains to love, and even more specifically, love of your enemies, and the idea that we shouldn't be judging anyone, and to what degree we will, to whatever measure, we will be judged that way. I think we're intelligent enough and we're connected enough through information technology that these discussions, as much as they seem like they'd have no end in sight, I think they're going to become more and more fruitful, and I think humanity is ready, we're capable, and we're willing to act with humility and come together and focus on what matters, which is love, coexistence, and that our actions speak louder than our words. What we say we believe or believed in the past really has nothing to do with how we coexist spiritually. And so I think that's it for today, but this message itself, that disunity is the biggest global problem at hand, and unity will only be found in our understanding spiritually of our nature and the nature of reality. That's the only way we're going to solve that problem of disunity. We're only going to unite in spirit. And so That's what this revolution's actually all about. This is the Raise Our Awareness revolution. I call it humanity's roar because we have been misled, in my opinion. Many people are calling this the Great Awakening. And yes, I believe it is well underway. I'm in agreement that we have been asleep. We have been good sheep for thousands of years, but now it's time we graduate, take off the training wheels, and recognize it was all leading to this point where we recognize ourselves not as sheep anymore, but divine lions that are all united in spirit, whether we know it or not. And once we embrace that symbolism, and once we come together as one human family under a simplified version or simplified understanding of reality and simplified philosophy based in principles and awareness, I think through that simplicity, we will find unity, common ground, base layer reality, or base layer foundation of what sure looks like it could be the initial stages of a new earth being born. And for all the people that see this potentially as the end times, I just encourage you to understand that the end is just the beginning. And the beginning is something that happens in stages over time. And we're in that transitionary phase where the beginnings are happening. The foundation is being laid. And so we should all feel inspired to make history together. We should embrace this unique opportunity as a positive one, albeit a challenge, but one where on the other side of us, transcending this religious divide, respecting all religions as historical relics that have been necessary stepping stones to reach this point, that provide for a fruitful, diverse discussion. I think we should all be looking forward to the future. And if we can approach it with that positive mentality and that high vibration of love and oneness, then I think we will come together. And again, that's what the Raise Our Awareness revolution aims to do. Because once we do, then we can achieve the highest vibration, which is authenticity and living in that knowing that we are beings of love and light, and that oneness is a critical piece to our understanding of the nature of reality. As paradoxical as it is, a lot of the deepest divine truths usually are. I think it is the reality, and even if you struggle with accepting that, there's reason to believe it's the route we should go, because it bears the best fruits, and you know a tree by their fruits. And so if it does bear the best fruits, arguably, then again, I think it's worth considering that we understand what that means. And so anyway, I'm Da Vinci the Truth. Once again, this is the Raise Our Awareness revolution. I look forward to working with everyone around the world, but I think it's important that we focus on coming together under one powerful, inspiring, symbolic revolution. Not another religion, and certainly not another cult, but a revolution in spirituality and consciousness. And so, anyway, I look forward to the future. God bless all of you. Love. Take care.